Welcome back, everyone. I'm Father Luke Mary Fletcher.
And I'm Brother Pius Gagne.
This is Franciscan Fridays at the Shrine. We're coming to you from the National Blue Army Shrine of Our Lady of Fatima, dedicated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and here in New Jersey. And today we're going to talk about the fourth joyful mystery of the Rosary. We know at Fatima, Mary asked us to pray the Rosary every day. She told the children, I am the Lady of the Rosary. And so here at the Shrine, we love the prayer, the devotion of the Rosary.
Absolutely.
And that fourth joyful mystery, the presentation in the temple. What an interesting mystery.
Yeah.
You know, we have a little miniature version of that out in our Rosary garden here. You've got Mary and Joseph. You have the baby Jesus. There's the little turtle doves, which will be the sacrifice of the poor for this Jewish ceremony.
Yeah.
And then you've got the older prophets who are there. There's a lot of content there to be meditated upon. So, Brother Pius, what are your thoughts?
A bunch. I really love...
Here we go. I can see Brother Pius like winding up.
That's
here
right.
We go. All right.
And here we go.
Yeah.
I really love this mystery because for a long time, I was like, what is going on here?
Right.
I think there's like a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right? So you have kind of a really, really poignant example of the virtue of hope and of piety in the prophets Simeon and Anna, who, the prophetess Anna spent most of her life praying night and day in the temple. Simeon, who received that promise that he would see the Messiah. And then you have Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus. And I think one of the things I never thought about, and I think it was another friar who brought this to my attention, is that this is actually the first mystery where Jesus sheds his blood for us. Because it's at the presentation in the temple where Jesus is circumcised according to Jewish tradition, and where he would literally, it's the first time where the precious blood is poured out for us that we know of, that's recorded in Scripture. Right. And so to think that the price, the merit of the precious blood, we have a friend who has a dear devotion to the precious blood, and to think that one drop of that precious blood, one cry from the baby Jesus was enough to save us. Like this instant, this moment of being offered, and what this signifies, right? It's redeeming the firstborn, because God, in ancient Egypt, he slew the firstborn of all of the Egyptians. And it's almost as though, like I've often thought about this, like what is happening that God requires a sacrifice to redeem the firstborn? And I wonder, we can often kind of like vilify the bad guys, especially in the Old Testament.
Right.
But like there's something of God's heart realizing, like, I didn't want Pharaoh to be hard-hearted,
right,
but he would be. And so it breaks my heart that the firstborn have to die of not only the people, but of the animals. And so there's a way in which the entire history of Israel is mindful of this, not only the beauty of being redeemed out of slavery in Egypt, but maybe realizing like the only reason we survived is because those people didn't. And so that's kind of it's just a mysterious thing to think about, this idea of sacrifice, of gift.
Yeah. And what you're highlighting there really is the fact that this moment kind of pulls together a whole history of the Jewish practices, the Jewish religion, the system of sacrifices. And there was this custom of the first child that opened the womb, the firstborn son, and there's a ceremony and the sacrificing of those two turtle doves and these prayers and blessings that were done. And in some ways, it's like even Simeon and Anna, these two elderly prophetic figures, feel like representatives of like what's now ending, the Old Testament era.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it feels like this moment is also looking towards the future, I think of when Jesus gets baptized. He doesn't need to be baptized, but he's quote unquote fulfilling all righteousness, you know, as he's gathering the history of his people in his own person. Like Jesus doesn't need to be like purified or purchased back, or even Mary's purification after the birth, but they're fulfilling all righteousness by submitting to these ceremonies of like the Jewish culture. But I think for me, one of the most beautiful meditations I read on this mystery connected it to the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. So this is somehow a prefigurement or foreshadowing of this, where Jesus will offer himself as the one sacrifice that brings salvation and redemption. And this moment somehow prefigures that. And then the idea of Mary's presence, where she's giving Jesus to the priest, and then she's giving Jesus to us, the prophet, they compare that to the Mass, where the Mass, the priest and the people, we give Jesus to the Father. And then when you receive Holy Communion, we're giving Jesus to the people.
Wow.
Kind of a mystical, prayerful perspective on the content of this fourth joyful mystery.
Yeah. And I think it's worth saying two thoughts are sort of in my mind here. One, it is right and just that you mentioned the Immaculate Heart as we're talking about this mystery, because it's here that Simeon prophesies that Jesus will be destined for the rising and falling of many in Israel. This is his prophecy. And then he says to Our Lady, and you, your own heart, a sword will pierce. Right. And that, to sort of go along with the prefigurements that you're talking about of the cross, like there's a small way in which I'm sure she suffered to see her little baby boy crying at the circumcision, but how much more, the great writers in history who ponder Our Lady's presence at the foot of the cross, and how as Jesus' heart was pierced and as Jesus is suffering on the cross, Mary is mystically pierced, mystically united with him, almost mystically dies along with him.
I think that was a John Paul II quote, spiritually crucified with her crucified son.
Yeah. And you wonder, and it says that she kind of keeps this idea in her heart. And, she's a good Jewish woman, so she knew the law, she knew the prophets, she knew what could happen, what it would mean. And I'm sure those years of the hidden life, which are so beautiful to think about, I don't think Jesus was idly not talking to his mom about his mission. I imagine that there's something there. And then another piece to this puzzle, and then I'll pass the ball back to you, is just to think on the feast day of the presentation, something that I had never thought of until I was praying the Liturgy of the Hours for a number of years, is that the presence of the Lord returns to the temple.
Right.
This is like a huge biblical theme where like God basically leaves the temple because the Ark of the Covenant is taken away.
That's around 500 years before Christ, with the conquering of Jerusalem and the exile into Babylon. The Ark of the Covenant disappears, and to this day has never been found. So the temple at the time of Christ, maybe this is a detail people are not aware of, that the Ark wasn't actually there. And there had been prophecies in the Old Testament that the presence of God would return. And this seems to be the moment that it happens. But he comes as a little baby into the temple, the God in the flesh. Yeah, profound.
Yeah, really, really beautiful.
So my friends, the daily rosary, Mother Mary asked for it at Fatima and other places, that beautiful highlights those key moments in the story and how they shed light on other moments in the story. So
and speaking of light, I think a sort of a point to close on is that at the Mass for the Feast of the Presentation, it's right at the end of Christmas. And traditionally, candles are blessed. Right. And we each have our candle at that Mass. It used to be called Candlemas.
Candlemas, February 2nd.
Yep, February 2nd. And I think a beautiful takeaway and a way to kind of apply these mysteries to our own life, in addition to kind of that beautiful mystical point about communion you mentioned, Father, is just to realize that in the same way that Jesus was presented in the temple, we're invited to enter into that mystery because we were presented and brought into the life and into the family of God by our baptism. Right. And the very first candle that was lit on our behalf happened at our baptism, our own little candle mass.
Beautiful.
And And so maybe the next time you see a candle lit, the next time you pray with this mystery and think about the last presentation Mass you were at, remember that that candle in your hand is representative of the flame of the life of God in your own heart, and that we're meant not only to ponder and to fan that flame, but also to share that flame with others.
A light to the nations.
A light to the nations.
Thank you for watching, everyone. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe. And also, if you'd like to donate, everything here is run by donations at Our Lady's Shrine.
Absolutely. God bless.